All right. So, welcome to day two. Today, we're talking about from one to one to one to many. So, essentially, how do we transition from one to one programs into more group programs? We're going to be talking a little bit about launching and launch runways, and we're going to be talking about the differences between messaging if you're talking to someone for a group program versus your one to one program. Now, just before we get into that, I'm going to touch on your offer suite. So if this is a new concept to you, essentially your offer suite is referring to the different services that you offer. Each offer is really designed to meet someone different on their health journey. They can stand on their own or they can act as a bit of a funnel where they lead into each other. So, for example, someone might start with a low ticket offer and then they move into the medium ticket and then they move into the high ticket and it becomes like a funnel. Or you could just have one really good offer that you focus on for the majority of your time. You can build a really successful business off one offer. You don't need to overcomplicate it with a lot of this stuff, or you bring these things in later. So, for example, if we're talking about a high ticket offer, the high ticket basically means it's higher price. This may be anywhere in the realm from, say, $2,000 up to $5,000. Medium ticket is in the middle somewhere. So this is usually where we put group programs. So anywhere from, say, $1,000 to $3,000. Recipes, meal plans, guides, ebooks, self-paced courses often go into that lower ticket funnel, or lower ticket kind of area, which can be anywhere from $20 to $500. The exact numbers here are ranges. They can change from person to person and what you're offering as well. Now, this medium ticket space, being group programs or memberships, is typically where you're going to be able to scale your income the most. It's where you're going to be able to help more people and to be able to basically bring in more money without always just putting more one-to-one calls in your calendar. So that is a big focus, obviously, around this challenge and what we're talking about. It's also how you can move your calendar from being really back to back with one-to-one calls into something with a lot more time, giving you that time freedom to create content and run your business and just do the things that you want in your day-to-day life. So this is a real life example of my calendar. So this is what it used to look like, say 2, 3 years ago. I was mainly doing one-to-one and I had just introduced one group program and I was doing a bit of both. And then this is my current calendar where essentially I do majority of group calls. I have my IBS program on 2 times on a Tuesday. And then with the scale group program, we have calls twice a week, similar on a Tuesday and a Thursday. How I typically spread out my week is Mondays, I do a bit of admin, check in with clients inside of Scale in our Slack support group, and then I create content for the week. Tuesday is usually a client day, Thursday is a client day, Wednesday is like a business operations, anything to do with scaling, to do with launching, like really that growth type time. And then Fridays, I usually just wrap things up and usually finish early. So this is really what's possible and kind of the goal here. It's really how do we help more people at the same time without always sacrificing your own time. In terms of like revenue goals and income, we're going to talk more about what's possible tomorrow. But this is really how I've been able to hit income months that are consistently, 20,000, 30,000, even some 40,000, $50,000 months. My client Julianne, who we'll talk about today, is someone who's a really great example of this with the processes in terms of launching. She recently had a launch of a group program and brought in over 50 people, and even over 20 people in the 24 hours of her launch as well. Now, when we're talking about group versus one-to-one, the biggest mistake I see people making is thinking that they're the same client avatar. They're different people, different program, different pain points or different problems, different transformation, and different client avatar. So this is not just about someone's personal preference, whether they want to be in one-to-one or whether they want to be in group. I really think it's helpful to think about these as two different people. So, for example, I'm going to talk through some different niches today. We can also talk through your specific niche as well if it's not on here. So, for example, if you work with endometriosis, you may do a group program for people who have, moderate symptoms that tend to be cyclical, being around hormones and fluctuations. And then you may have a higher level one-to-one program if they have a combination, for example, IBS and endo, so more of a complex caseload. Celiac disease, you may have a group program for people when they're first diagnosed. They diagnose, they come across your account, they hear about your program, they do the 8 weeks, say, crash course about everything they need to know about getting started. Then a one-to-one program would be that higher ticket offer. This can be for people who have gone through potentially the group program and then they're still having ongoing gut issues or they still need that higher level support, then they'll move up in that funnel. Or it may be someone who has had celiac disease for 10 years, they're having gut issues, they're having bigger problems. It's not resolving with just a gluten-free diet. And again, they need more hands-on support. An IBS version could be something like a group program, someone that has just wants to go through the low FODMAP diet. They want all the right resources to do it correctly. And then the one-to-one program could be someone who doesn't want to do that, or they've done that and they really need holistic support. So here you might go into nervous system regulation and pelvic floor and nutrition and kind of all in one. So these are quite different people, different problems. Not everyone in the world wants super high support, wants to work with you for 6 months, all of this stuff. So it's important that to have offers essentially to meet people at different stages of their journey. So when we're thinking about the group program, some questions to ask yourself in difference to or similar to what we'd ask yourself with a one-to-one, but really what are the pain points they're experiencing? What are their desires and what's the result that they want? What is the transformation that you can actually offer in a group program? Typically, the transformation in a group program is going to be slightly lower. It may not be that you're solving every single problem in the world, but we focus on that transformation that you can offer. What have they tried in the past? What are the mistakes that they're making? I like to think about who would actually be good for a group as well. Some people really love community. And then, so you can speak to that inside of your content as well. You could say, you are someone who loves community. You're tired of doing this on your own and you want to be in a group program. I think there's a bit of a mindset block here. Some people believe themselves that group isn't as valuable or people don't want group. And it's simply not true. I'm a great example of that. I really love group programs or hybrid programs where you get a bit of both. I have clients that come into my IBS program and we do the discovery call and they say, oh, I'm so excited to be in a group. Like I love to be in a group. So it's important to work through that mindset block and know that group can be really, really valuable. People can get really incredible results still, and some people really thrive in that environment. And what mistakes have they made, or what are they considering doing to help themselves that won't be helpful? So that's a point we're going to talk most about today. Remember that you can choose who this is. You don't have to do who you think is in your audience or who you've worked with in this past. Always think about calling in. We're calling in the people that you actually want to work with. Now, before we launch a group program or relaunch a group program, your content is what's going to help to build awareness to call in that dream client, and having a launch runway is essentially going to do this. So what a launch runway is, it's the period of time before you say doors are open, like the program is here. The launch runway in terms of a timeline, we'll talk about that. Inside of Scale, we break down the launch into multiple stages. So looking at market research, launch planning, the pre-launch phase, the content, a launch event. Launch event is something like a masterclass, a challenge, a Instagram live series, something to get people deeper into your world. Launch week is essentially where on Instagram you're like, doors are open for 7 days, 14 days, and you talk about it a lot. You add urgency. You say X number of spots available. You get this bonus if you join this week. It really helps to just like bring people over the line. And then the last 24 hours during a launch is quite important as well. We have different types of buyers. Some buyers are people that will take action early and they will always buy in that first 24 hours because they love the excitement of it and they love those early bonuses. Then we have other buyers that really feed off FOMO and they will wait to the last minute, and you'll see that. For example, Julianne, one of my clients, she saw about 50% of her sales come in the last 24 hours because people just really wait for that last minute urgency. So when we're planning a launch, exactly how long your timeline will be really depends on a lot of things. It depends on where you're up to in business. It depends on what your current audience is like, how many followers you have. Are they hot, cold? Like, are you getting any response currently? If you're not getting any new clients through Instagram, you're not getting any people in your DMs, then you would have a colder audience. And we really need a longer timeline before we launch the program to actually build community, build your email list, build awareness around the program and how it works. As you get deeper into this and as you have a warmer or hotter audience, the timeline to launch a program will get much shorter. You can launch it in a much shorter time space, as little as sort of 4 weeks. So this will kind of depend a lot what we tend to do, what I'd like to do with this with my clients inside of Scale is we plan backwards. So we do an assessment of where the audience is at the moment. Are you getting many DMs? Like, are you getting new clients? What's kind of happening behind the scenes? And then we'll plan a launch timeline, basically, depending on how hot or cold your audience is. With a consistent content strategy, you can have a warm audience all year round. Something that I was taught 5 years ago, and I know other dietitians were as well, is that we used to launch like every 12 weeks, and you'd go through these kind of content systems where it's called top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel. So if you've been in the online space, you'll know what I'm talking about. But essentially, what it meant is that you would talk to people that were cold, you'd warm them up, and then you'd bring them into hot. What I think is possible is to really just speak to that person who is ready for change. So I call it the empowered buyer. So there's people out there that are looking for you right now. They are ready for change. And we can shift your content strategy to mainly speak to that person who is ready for change, which basically means you're going to have a warmer audience all year round. And this launch runway can be a lot shorter, less prep time, more clients, less work essentially. So when we're planning through a launch runway, I recommend setting your dates backwards. So think about, when do you want the doors to open, and when's the program actually going to start? So for example, right now it's 11th of February. If you're saying, okay, well, I want my program to start 1st of April, then we plan the weeks back and we plan your content around this. If you have a hotter audience, then again, we do a shorter runway. We might say, okay, well, we could actually probably launch it 1st of March, and then we plan backwards from there. So essentially it looks something like that. So for example, we'll say, okay, the doors for this made up month, let's say the program was starting on the 1st of April here. And then we plan backwards. So the launch event being your masterclass is here, doors will be open for that week or up to 2 weeks, and then we plan backwards from there. Now, during your launch runway, what we're doing through a content perspective is we're building awareness to the problems that your program solves. We're addressing the mistakes that people make, and we're highlighting those desires people have. So what we're really doing here, it's not just about coming out and providing education and tips. We want everything to set you up as the solution, or your service up as the solution, and always calling in that dream client. So how we do this inside of Scale is I do it through the 3 content pillars. So yesterday we spoke about authority content. So authority content will make up about 30 to 40% of your content. The second content pillar that I like to use and then I teach is called opinion content. So opinion content, we're really looking at your perspectives, your opinions, and your thoughts insight on the industry. So with this, opinion content helps to take things a bit deeper. It shows more of an emotional connection with your audience. It's also going to help stand out from the crowd. So Zara, I know you popped inside of the Facebook page today that how do we actually stand out in the crowd when there is 100 other dietitians in this niche, or there's thousands of people doing the same stuff. And using your content is one way to do that. One of them being opinion-based content. Now, with opinion-based content, there's a really fine line here. We don't want to make someone feel bad about their choices. It's not here to make someone feel like crap. It's really about helping them to see what they're currently doing isn't helping, and there is another way to do it. So what they can do instead, and we're bridging that gap for them. So with this, what I want you to think about is, what is an opinion, or what is something that you really want to say? What's something that if you could just shake your dream client, be like, stop doing this, or like, don't do that? Or what is something that sometimes you would love to go and say, and then you hold yourself back and you think, oh, I don't want to say that. These are the kind of opinions that I think we should be sharing. I think that as dietitians and health professionals, everyone kind of errs on a bit of caution. Obviously, we're still sticking to your ethics and your values and everything you believe in. It's not about lying or anything like that. It's really just about sharing your opinions and being bold in that. The biggest thing with opinion-based content, same with everything, is I want you to think about this dream client and where they are on their journey, and we're speaking to that mistake. So some examples of opinion-based content. You may be saying things like, trusting in Facebook groups. So if you feel like your dream client is always turning to Facebook groups and getting poor information, they're getting nutrition advice from your doctor and you think that that's not very helpful. If there's specific supplements that you see a lot of people taking or things that are trending on social media at the moment, you can get out and talk about that and why it's not helpful and what they can do instead. Specific diet, so carnivore is obviously a big one at the moment. If that's something you don't believe in or you don't think your dream client should be doing, get out and talk about it. If there's specific tests, so for example, food sensitivity tests or gut microbiome mapping is a big one in my field. Business coaching, some different opinions that I like to share is things like you don't need to do cold DM strategies. You shouldn't be copying other people's content. You shouldn't be neglecting your Instagram stories. If you are not talking about your offer often and then people aren't buying and then you're feeling surprised by that. So here we're highlighting those mistakes and just helping people to see that there's a different way to do it. If we're talking about group versus one-to-one opinion content, remember, different client avatars, different mistakes. So, mistakes that, for example, a newly diagnosed celiac may be making is that they may be Googling, is X food gluten-free? They may be looking at Facebook groups, they may be looking at label reading apps. Someone who is 10 years into their celiac journey and who has ongoing gut issues will likely be making different mistakes. They may be cutting out dairy, cutting out FODMAPs. They may be looking at different gut healing supplements. They may be doing the food sensitivity tests. Because their problem, their pain points are different, their goals are different, the opinion content here is going to be different. So we're going to speak differently to these. The other thing I want you to keep in mind here is when we're calling in the dream client, is if you're constantly calling out really complex or big mistakes, you're going to call in complex clients. In a group program, this is probably not ideal. You don't want to have the people, well, you may, but most of the time you don't want to have a group full of these people that have tried everything, nothing is working, they're struggling with these really big problems. They are more likely going to be a better fit for one-to-one. So if you're doing a group program, we need to think about lower level mistakes and lower level opinions, and then speak about those often in your content. So for example, if we come back to the celiac disease example, these opinion-based hooks, which I'm going to give you the blank ones for today, it may be something like, if there is one thing you need to learn right now, it is that Facebook support groups are not going to be helping with your newly diagnosed celiac disease. Or stop wasting your time with the label reading apps when you're first diagnosed with celiac disease. Or I wish more newly diagnosed celiacs knew that Googling, is this food gluten-free, is going to make you feel more overwhelmed. Do this instead. So we're highlighting those common mistakes that people make, and then we're explaining why that is something that you don't recommend and linking that to what they can do instead, linking to how you help people and ideally into your program or your masterclass or whatever is coming up next. So Julianne is a current client that you may have seen me spoken about on Instagram this last week. We have been working together inside of Scale since last November, with the initial goal was to launch this January. And so Julianne has an established Instagram account. She's not brand new, for the record. So she came in with the goal of she wanted to relaunch her group program and do exactly this. She wanted to call in people that were not so complex. She works in the IBS space, and she wanted to fill the group program with people that weren't such a drain on energy, that could get really good results and create a positive atmosphere. So what we really focused on is planning her launch event, planning her content, getting more consistent there while still maintaining authenticity to her personality, and to actually bring in these people. And this is what she said recently. She said, I have a feeling that I've actually reached people that I want to work with, which makes me really excited to help them. And I feel so relieved. So not only did she bring in over 50 clients at this point, but she also was able to bring in and draw in the right types of people, which is really the goal at the end of the day. So for today, our homework task is looking at this. So we're looking at opinion content, thinking about whatever your offer is right now that you want to focus on. This may be just your one-to-one program, or if you're ready to transition into group, then think about your group offer and who this client avatar is. And I want you to make a list of the mistakes that they're making. This, similar to yesterday, to find this information, if you're not really sure, then it's helpful to reflect on conversations with your current clients. If you have any friends with this medical condition, like for example, if you work with PCOS and you're friends with PCOS, like talk to them. What are they hearing? What are they seeing in the community? If you have an Instagram account, you can put a question box up and ask people what they're doing. You can try just looking it up, like look up your niche on Instagram and see what other people are talking about and just see, what the vibe is. And then then think about, okay, how can I talk about this in my own way to show people what I do and how that is going to be different. I'm going to give you the blank hooks again so that you can play around with this. We're going to link in the mistakes and calling in the dream client. In that, with the homework this time, if you can just let me know just a little background of who the client is if you're speaking to someone in one-to-one or into group, just so I know when I'm giving the feedback to make it specific as well. A reminder that we do have so these are the hooks that I'll give you. So we showed them before. And a reminder that for anyone that we are doing a giveaway this week. So every time you come live to a challenge, every time you enter into the homework, you also go in the draw to win a one-to-one intensive with me. We can use this on any topic that you like. I'm going to be drawing that on Friday. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone have questions on today's topic? Hello, Sally. Mute, unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, Less about the homework part, but
Sure.
going back to the launch runway that you spoke about and
Yep.
like how hot and cold your audience are. Um, I guess I feel like my audience is pretty cold. I don't get a lot of DMs or new clients from Instagram. They seem to come from other places more so.
Yep.
So what sort of, is it still the same kind of three pillars of content to focus on to try and warm them up? Is it just a connection issue that I need to get better at the connection part to get more people in my DMs, to get a warmer audience? I think that's where my struggle is at the moment, to
Yes.
successfully like get a group launch. Like I'm doing my group launch right now for anyone else who's listening.
Yeah.
I think my audience is not hot.
Yeah. Good question. Look, so yes, look, in terms of types of content, the content pillars remain pretty much the same throughout the year. The in terms of like the hooks and the themes, the where we direct people to will change. So we'll direct them to a lead magnet or a masterclass or the program, like the call to actions will change. The I often do. So if your audience is fairly cold, we usually do a community building phase first. So this is really where we're pouring value into your community to build that trust, get people really to get to know you. We're giving freebies away. We are giving free information away and just like really creating that warmth first and establishing that trust. So we do that through content. We do that through some back end stuff. So if you're doing this launch and like it hasn't gone as well as you'd hope, then yes, we come back to looking at the community, we come back to looking at your content and seeing how we can be consistent with these content pillars for more time to really establish that trust first. So look, a good percentage of it comes back to content. We also can think about the trust funnel. So when we're talking about building trust with your audience, the different types of content will have different uh, influences on people as well. So, for example, like short B-roll type reels won't develop a super high amount of trust. So, is there variety to having carousels and Instagram lives and talking reels and other variety in content?
Yep.
As well as the other things I'd look at on the back end, I'd be looking at your email sequences. I'd be looking at have you got contact there and that kind of stuff as well. So, there's a lot that can go into the launch
Yeah,
runway.
yeah, no, that's actually
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah, thank you.
That's okay. Uh, Anyone else have questions? Victoria? Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so how do you suggest weaving in your content plan, like talking about the group versus the individual? Like, are you kind of supposed to be doing one that's aimed at your group, one like, or is it just depending on where you're leading up to in terms of your launch?
Yeah, I like to map. I think it's helpful to map out the quarter or map out the year to really know what your focus is and where you want to be. And depending on your offer suite of where we want to focus as well. Typically focusing on one at a time and or focusing on one, for example, a group program as being the foundation of most of your marketing. And then we upsell people into one-to-one behind the scenes and give them like the VIP version if they're not suitable for that group. So it'll depend on, yes, your audience and what your focus is, typically focusing on one at a time. Yeah. Okay. Nicole, Cassie, Sarah, you got any questions in the chat? No. Okay, easy. Well, I'm going to pop the recording and the homework task up inside of the Facebook group now. Same idea, I'll be there in there either this afternoon or definitely tomorrow morning, giving everyone feedback so you've got some time to get it in. And if you have any other questions, you're very welcome to pop in that Facebook group as well. All right, thanks guys. Bye.